this new episode of Language for Dummies. This time we have a special guest from Australia that's going to teach us some Australian slang. So, hello, how are you going?
Good day, mate. All good. How are you going?
How I'm going? I'm not sure I understand. Can you please explain it to me?
How are you going is like, how are you? It is very important in Australia and probably the most common question that will be asked from you.
Right, that explains it. Well, I am fine.
You can't?
I'm so sorry to ask, but can you explain it again?
You can't means,
Derp, derpity, derp, derp, derp.
are you sure?
Oh, right, yes, and I'm sure. Well, as we can see, there's a lot to learn about Australian slang, and it's kind of difficult to have a conversation with somebody who is a Sorry, we was a native Australian speaker, so if I just say some words, can you translate them into Australian?
Defo.
But first, let me take a selfie.
Hello, my name is Alicia Bauma and thank you for watching Language for Dummies. Today's topic is Australia, and I'm going to tell something about Australia's historical background, the Australian culture, their general way of life, how we can sound like an Australian person, what their different dialects are, and how Australian is related to Standard English. Well, first, Australians' historical background. Australian English is a rather new English dialect that started around 200 years ago. It began with the first settlements in New South Wales in 1778, and the children of the colonists, started to speak Australian English. Well, the Australian English dialect is created by different elements present in different dialects from all over England, and in 1898 Australian words were first written in the Historical Dictionary of the English Language in Australia. Well, Australian English now has become distinctively different from any other type of English. The two main reasons are the immigration of the English and the accepting of the local Aborigines language. Well, the Australian culture. Australia consists of a wide range of different races, which creates a diverse multicultural setting. This can be seen in a lot of different cultural aspects, like Australia's lifestyle, its culture and its traditions. And it can also be religions, but also cuisine, clothing, etc. Australia is, for example, very well known for its laid-back lifestyle. They are known to be very polite, friendly, and are generally more outgoing than other cultures. There are multiple key values that reflect the Australian way of life, and those are freedom of speech, freedom of religion, democracy, peacefulness, equal opportunities, equality, and regardless of religion, nationality, sexual preference, sex, or disability. Well, these key values show the wide range in possibilities of the Australian culture. Australia also is an egalitarian society, which means that there is no difference or distinctions in formal class. Everybody can live the way they want, no matter what your income, background, religion, or etc. is. Well, what is their general way of life? Though the average American or European would think that Australians are a bunch of drunk people trying to speak English and rodeoing kangaroos while sleeping in the wild, the truth is quite different. Because a large part of Australia is desert and all metropolitan areas are located at the coast, the citizens of Australia can choose between a busy city life or relaxed country life. Either way, Australia has a high quality of life overall, with people visiting the country saying even the largest cities are very relaxed. No loud traffic, low crime rate, very pleasing overall. Even though Australia is located on the other side of the globe, the way of life strongly resembles that of a Western country, except with more spiders and snakes, and everything else that tries to kill you, like spiders. So, how can we sound like a typical Australian? Well, the Australian accent is one of the hardest things to learn. It is a lazy variety with unfinished words and interesting sounds. One of the basic things you should know is the pronunciation of vowels. An I, as in like, is not pronounced as I in Australia. Instead, people pronounce it more like oi, as in oil. Well, it is more pronounced like, though of course don't exaggerate it like I do. Well, the A is usually pronounced as E. The E in egg, black, will become more bleak. An O is often pronounced as oo, kangaroo, diggity-doo, and apart from these vowels, there are also some other things you should know. Well, words ending on ER get more an A sound at the end. You don't say water, you say water. The L is very important to Australians, which is why they have the so-called thick L, like. And most importantly, sentences in Australia go up to the end. Therefore, it often sounds like they are posing a question. I would like some water, mate. So, what are the different dialects? West Australia, South Australia, New South Wales, Tasmania, Victoria, Queensland and the Torres Strait Islands all have very different dialects, though it's definitely still Australian. These accents still slightly differ from each other. Well, these dialects are divided into three categories: broad, general and cultivated. General Australian is very much like English, though with an accent and a slightly different vocabulary. Broad Australian, on the other hand, is a very strong accent, sometimes barely understandable and often associated with the lower working class. Cultivated Australian is the very light accent sophisticated people have. So, how does Australian relate to Standard English? Well, grammar and spelling wise, it's very similar to British, where it originally came from. The Australian variety of English very much sounds like English Cockney. In Standard English, slang is rarely used, yet in Australia people use it all the time. There's a difference in vocabulary too, and the Australian pronunciation is different from any other. The grammar, however, is very similar to Standard English.
To conclude, Australian English came to be after the British convict people came to colonize the island. They took the dodgy Cockney to this new land, and the children of the first inhabitants started to expand the vocabulary and slang of the language. These days, Australia is a multicultural, peaceful and accepting country. Australia is known for its relaxed culture. Despite what many people think, Australians have a relaxed life, either in the big cities like Sydney or in the beautiful nature of the country. Though their way of life is not so different from the Western culture, apart from the calm nature of its people, the language is very different from other English-speaking countries. Neck oil, for example, is beer, and this is one of the many examples there are of differences between Standard English and Australian. There is an even wider range of expressions in Australia. Slang is used a lot, at first sight random words, but they actually have a meaning behind them only Australians know. An example is knock up, meaning wake up in Standard English, but how can one who doesn't speak Australian learn to speak it? It is one of the hardest varieties to learn, for it has a very special pronunciation and loads of slang. The first thing one should learn is to get the pronunciation right. An I will be pronounced more like an oi, for example, yet this differs per region. There are many different dialects in Australia, for it's a very big country. These accents mostly define themselves by a slight difference in pronunciation and vocabulary. Besides these slight differences, it's still clear they come from Australia. The Australian variety of English doesn't have much in common with standard English apart from the grammar and loads of words. It's different because of its slang, wide range of interesting vocabulary, and pronunciation. Australia, its language and people are different from the rest of the world, and this has definitely to do with its past and its language. The people are relaxed, which can be heard in the language as well, for they shorten words and sayings and sometimes don't even finish words. Australian is a very special variety of English and definitely not one that should be forgotten. This was Language for Dummies. Good day. Australia.
Australia.
Football.
Footy.
Chocolate.
Chocky.
Laptop.
Leppy.
Afternoon.
Arvo.
Breakfast.
Brekkie.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Dressing.
Aggro.
Birthday.
Birthday.
Facebook.
Facey.
Sunglasses.
Sunnies.
Christmas.
Chrissy.
Well, thank you for the small talk about Australian slang. As we can see, there's a big difference between English and Australian, and there's a lot to learn. Well, this was another episode of Language for Dummies. I hope you guys enjoyed.
Catch you later.
Hey, Fresh Betty.
Stand